Welcome to the deep dive. Things are definitely heating up politically here in Nigeria, aren't they? Looking ahead to 2027.
Absolutely. The ruling APC and President Tinubu, they're under the microscope, and you can feel the opposition starting to, well, make moves.
Exactly. And today we're diving into a really interesting, quite revealing interview with Babachir David Lawal, the former secretary to the government of the Federation.
Right, and he's not just commenting from the sidelines. He's deep inside that Atiku Abubakar-led opposition coalition.
Yeah, involved in their contact and mobilization and finance committees. So he's got, a front row seat.
It gives his perspective real weight. It's not just guesswork. He's part of the planning.
Definitely. So what we want to do in this deep dive, using Lawal's insights, is figure out, realistically, can this opposition coalition actually challenge the APC and Tinubu in 2027?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Can they pull it together?
Okay, so let's start with the mood out there. There's a lot of skepticism, right? People see politicians jumping ship to the APC and think, well, the opposition looks fragmented.
That's understandable. Those defections, they make headlines. It's easy to see that and think the APC is just getting stronger and the opposition weaker.
But Lawal, he just waves that away. He basically says, if you aren't in a room, you won't be able to know what is happening, implying there's stuff going on behind closed doors.
And he really stresses the secrecy. He mentioned, we don't take photographs. We don't take minutes of meetings. He frames it as strategy, not disorganization.
Interesting. That secrecy could be a double-edged sword, though, couldn't it? It protects them, but maybe fuels that public doubt.
Could be. But Lawal sounds personally convinced. He says he'd be back farming if he didn't believe they had a real chance.
That's quite a statement. Okay, let's talk about Atiku Abubakar. The big assumption is this whole coalition thing is just about getting him another shot at the presidency.
Well, it's a logical assumption given his history and his current role, He's the most prominent name involved, arguably.
But Lawal pushes back hard on that. He says, look, you've got Peter Obi in these meetings, you've even got Amechi. Why would they be there if it's just the Atiku show?
That's a fair point.
Yeah.
And Lawal himself, remember, he backed Obi quite strongly in 2023.
Right. So for him to suddenly be all in just for Atiku, it doesn't quite add up, like he says.
So what's the alternative plan then, according to Lawal?
He says the focus, first and foremost, is building a solid, unified political platform. Get that structure right.
And then worry about the candidate.
Exactly. Once the platform is there, they'll have a democratic process, a national convention, he says, to pick the presidential flag bearer.
Platform before person, okay.
Which naturally brings up those rumors about a deal between Obi and Atiku. Is something already cooked?
Lawal says no, basically dismisses it as way too early. You can't have a deal before you even know what the platform is or who might emerge,
Makes sense. Okay, what about Rabiu Kwankwaso? He's another major player. Is he in this coalition?
Kwankwaso. Lawal's answer was a bit careful. He said Kwankwaso isn't formally with them right now. But importantly, he's not against them either. Lawal suggested Kwankwaso might be sort of watching how things unfold, a wait-and-see approach, perhaps.
Like maybe others are doing too.
Very likely. Politics is often about timing, isn't it?
True. Shifting gears to the ruling party, the APC.
Yeah.
There's this talk sometimes about Tinubu potentially aiming for a one-party state. Does Lawal see that as a real threat?
He seems quite skeptical about that possibility in Nigeria, his reasoning.
Yeah.
Nigerian politicians are just too quick to jump ship if they lose out somewhere.
You mentioned local government elections as an example, right? How quickly
Yeah.
people switch parties.
Exactly. That constant movement, that political fluidity, he thinks, works against any single party becoming totally dominant.
And he actually expects people who lose out in the APC primaries down the line to potentially, join their coalition.
That seems to be his expectation, yeah. That the coalition could actually be strengthened by fallouts from the ruling party. It's an interesting dynamic he's pointing to.
Okay, so if they're building this new platform, where will it be housed? There's been a lot of chatter about the African Democratic Congress, the ADC.
Yeah, the ADC's name keeps popping up, but Lawal was clear. No decision made yet. He mentioned ADC, yes, but also the SDP, the Social Democratic Party, and potentially others are being looked at.
So how are they deciding? What are the criteria?
Well, this is where it gets quite detailed. He said their technical committees are looking closely at things like the party's constitution. Can they take over the leadership easily? Can they strengthen it?
Okay, what else?
They're checking for major legal baggage or internal fights. He specifically flagged the PDP here as potentially having intractable management problems.
Interesting. So avoiding existing messes.
Seems like it. Also, Crucially, is the party willing to let the coalition actually lead? And what are the terms for that?
And there was a practical point, too, wasn't there, about INS?
Yes, very important. Does the party have at least one elected official currently? That's apparently key to avoid being deregistered by INE.
Wow, so it's a really thorough checklist, not just picking a name off a list.
Definitely not. It shows the complexities, the different interests they have to balance while building this thing.
Which brings us back to the PDP. Why not try to work with the biggest opposition party? It seems like the obvious route to some.
Well, besides that intractable management problem Lawal mentioned, he also pointed out that the PDP apparently insists any coalition has to be under the PDP banner.
Ah, so the PDP wants to be the main vehicle, but this new group wants something more independent.
That seems to be the sticking point. Lawal's group wants to build something potentially new or take over a smaller platform on their own terms.
But does he think PDP members might eventually join them?
He suggested that, yeah. He believes some sensible people in the PDP might get fed up and see the new coalition as a better bet.
And he stressed these talks are individual to individual right now, not party to party. Even himself, he's technically APC.
But acting as an individual in these coalition meetings, it really shows how fluid things are. Old party lines seem less important than finding a viable alternative right now.
Which is fascinating, considering his own position, still technically APC, but actively building an opposition force and having backed Obi last time. How does he square that?
He acknowledges the APC leadership isn't happy, but says he hasn't quit or been sacked. His justification was pretty blunt, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's democracy. It isn't slavish, it isn't religion, political party isn't a religion.
Essentially arguing for political flexibility based on principle or circumstance. It's a pragmatic view.
Okay, while they're strategizing, governors are defecting to the APC. Doesn't that worry the coalition? Losing figureheads like that?
Surprisingly, Lawal said they're not really concerned. His focus, or rather the coalition's focus, he claims, is squarely on the voters.
The voters, not the big names.
Exactly. He called the voters the victim of the system we are against. His point was, even if all 36 governors joined APC, that's still only 36 votes, metaphorically speaking.
Whereas they're trying to reach the masses directly.
Right. A grassroots strategy versus consolidating elite support. It's a clear difference in approach.
Now let's talk about the regional angle. Nigeria's politics are always complex that way. Could this coalition be seen as, a northern agenda against Tinubu, a southerner?
Lawal pushed back very strongly against that. He kind of flipped it, asking why Southerners aren't complaining more if Tinubu's policies are hurting the North so badly.
Hurting how? What did he mention?
He cited insecurity, lack of development, budgets not being funded properly in the North. He used these points to argue it's not about Northern entitlement, but about perceived Northern suffering under the current administration.
So framing it as a failure of governance affecting the North, not just a regional power play.
Precisely. And on insecurity specifically, he rejected the excuse that it started before Tinubu. He said it's the current president's job to fix it, and he feels it's gotten worse.
He made it personal too, didn't he? About wanting to travel safely, wanting farmers to work without fear.
Yes, bringing it down to basic needs and safety. It's a powerful way to counter that Northern agenda narrative.
Okay, last big point. Looking back at 2023, Lawal famously opposed the APC's Muslim ticket and backed Obi instead. Does he regret that now? Any second thoughts about not supporting Tinubu?
Not one bit, according to him. He was emphatic, said he's thankful he made that decision, relieved not to be part of the current government, especially seeing the hardship he says his community and church members face.
So his opposition to the single faith ticket remains a core conviction for him.
Absolutely. He went back to his reasons feelings of marginalization for Northern Christians, the idea that qualified Christians from the North were overlooked for VP.
He mentioned specific examples like educated people from his own tribe, qualified academics, bishops.
Yes, arguing that the talent pool was there, but ignored. For him, that Muslim ticket wasn't just politics. It symbolized a wider disregard for Northern Christians in federal roles. It was unacceptable to him.
So wrapping this up, what we see from Lawal's interview is an opposition that believes it's serious, strategic, and building something substantial for 2027.
Yeah, they're focused on creating that unified platform, appealing directly to voters, and they have strong criticisms of the current government, particularly on security and, for Lawal, issues of inclusion.
And they're pushing back hard against being labeled as just a regional project.
Definitely.
So for you, the listener, it leaves a lot to chew on. How this coalition shapes up, the platform they choose, the candidate they eventually pick, and crucially, whether they can connect with ordinary Nigerians. These will be huge factors heading towards 2027.
It really raises big questions about Nigeria's political future and whether we might see a real power shift. The next couple of years will be fascinating to watch.
Indeed. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.